All right. Last episode, I called the boys' pilot perfect. It was perfect. Perfect. Not good, not a strong start, not promising, perfect. Which creates a problem, because once you call something perfect, the very next question becomes, can they actually keep it up? Or was the pilot one of those magical television accidents where every piece lands exactly right and the rest of the show spends years trying to catch back up to it? So, we're about to find out. Because this is my first time rewatching episode 2 since it originally aired in 2019. And honestly, I forgot how much this episode feels like Pilot Part 2. It doesn't really feel like a traditional second episode. It feels like someone took the pilot, chopped it in half, and told Amazon, technically, that's 2 episodes. The cliffhanger isn't resolved off screen, the story isn't reset, the characters aren't starting some new adventure. We literally pick up exactly where we left off. Homelander just murdered the mayor. Translucent is trapped in a cage. Hughie is still having the worst week in human history, and Butcher is still a psychopath. So immediately the momentum feels fantastic. Nothing stops, nothing slows down. The show just keeps running. And honestly, that might be one of the biggest reasons that season 1 feels so much tighter than later seasons. The early episodes are laser focused. Everybody is moving toward the same goal. Everybody is serving the same narrative. Nothing feels bloated yet. Nothing feels like side quests. Nothing feels like the writers buying time. Everything matters. And then we meet Frenchie, which is interesting because I don't love Frenchie as a character. I never really have. That might be controversial. I know a lot of people adore the Frenchman, but looking back, I think my issue isn't necessarily Frenchie himself. It's what the show eventually does with him, because his introduction is excellent. The show has a practical problem. They have captured a superhero. They have absolutely no idea how to kill him. And instead of pulling a solution out of nowhere, the story naturally introduces somebody who actually knows things. Frenchie enters because the story requires him to. That is good writing. But more importantly, Frenchie immediately functions as a warning. Not to Translucent, not to Homelander, to Hughie Campbell. Because the moment Frenchie appears, the show basically says, hey Hughie, you know this path you're walking down with Butcher? This is where it ends. Frenchie is the future. Frenchie is what happens when you stay in Butcher's orbit too long. The people you love die. Pieces of yourself die. Your morality erodes. Your soul gets exhausted. And eventually you become somebody who casually discusses shoving explosives into a superhero's rear end over breakfast. That is fantastic character storytelling. Now, has the show convinced me Frenchie needs to be a series-long main character yet? No, not even remotely. But it has convinced me he belongs in this episode. And that's enough for now. Then we get the Make-A-Wish scene, and I forgot how funny this was. You'll teach me to outrun cancer? That line kills me, because it perfectly captures what made early boys' humor work. The show isn't desperately screaming jokes at you. It isn't trying to turn every scene into a meme. It isn't stopping the story so everybody can wink at the audience. The absurdity speaks for itself. A-Train showing up to a dying child in place of Translucent is already insane. The show just trusts the insanity, and somehow that makes it even funnier. That's something I missed later on in the series. Early, the boys often let situations be funny on their own. Later, the boys sometimes feels like it needs everybody in the room to remind you that things are funny. That is a big difference. Black Noir is another interesting case, because watching these early episodes now makes me wonder if they ever seriously considered doing the comic book twist. Noir feels mysterious here. He feels important. He feels like somebody. It's kind of impressive that 2 completely different versions of the character on the show somehow both end up arriving at the exact same destination. Nowhere. But man, the potential for this series is all over these early episodes, and one of the best examples of that potential is the crime analytics system. This is the stuff I completely forgot existed, and it's brilliant because the soups aren't actually allowed to just go save people. They need approval, insurance, legal authorization, PR preparation, news coverage, liability protection, everything has to be approved by the suits beforehand, which means these superheroes are somehow less free to stop crime than actual superheroes. It's incredible satire. They're just corporate employees pretending to be heroes. The rescue isn't the product, the footage is the product. The crime isn't the priority, the branding opportunity is the priority. And that's such a smart extension of the season 1 premise. The show isn't just saying that superheroes are bad, the show is saying corporations turn everything into a content factory, even heroism, especially heroism. And honestly, this is exactly the type of idea later seasons rarely spend enough time exploring. Because this stuff is fascinating, it's cynical, it's believable, and it feels specific. Season 1 keeps finding these little corporate details that make the world feel real, which brings us to Ashley, early Ashley, and wow, I forgot how good she is here. Because she's not a monster yet, she's a talent manager, she's a corporate handler, she's basically a walking collection of HR-approved phrases. Every concern Starlight raises gets met with the same energy. Oh my gosh, that's exactly why we love you. And that's exactly why we need you to do this. It's all about authenticity. Now please, read the script. She never directly tells Annie no. She just gently redirects her. Again, and again, and again, and again. It's manipulation disguised as encouragement. And that is way more interesting than just making her evil. Then we cut back to Hughie, Butcher, and Frenchie rolling up to Tony Cicero's. Punk music blasting, translucent trapped in the trunk. Everybody calmly discussing whether dynamite up the rear end is medically advisable. And honestly, this is peak Early Boys. Because it's ridiculous, but nobody treats it like it's a joke. Frenchie acts like this is just a normal Tuesday. Butcher acts like this is a business meeting. Hughie is the only person reacting appropriately to everything going on, which somehow makes the entire thing even funnier. That's one of the things season 1 understands incredibly well. Insanity played straight is way funnier than a punchline, and I laughed way more during these early episodes than I ever have on the later seasons. But underneath the comedy, Hughie is still clinging to one last piece of innocence. He still refuses to kill Translucent, and Butcher basically responds with, "That's all right, mate. I'll do all the killing for both of us." I love that, because it gives Hughie hope. False hope, but hope. He still believes he can stay clean. He still believes somebody else can carry the darkness. He still believes there is a version of the story where he gets revenge without becoming a part of the violence himself. We know how little of that innocence actually survives, which makes this even better. Then we get Homelander and Stillwell, and this is where episode 2 becomes really fascinating. Because Homelander feels different here. Not weaker, not softer, different. He feels younger emotionally, like a child desperately trying to prove himself. He presents killing the mayor almost like he brought home a good report card. Look what I did. Look how useful I am. Look how loyal I am. Look how much I helped. And Stillwell immediately starts explaining why his actions created political problems. And suddenly, you can see it. The insecurity, the frustration, the need for validation. Anthony Starr is so good here, because Homelander isn't trying to conquer the world yet. He's trying to impress Mom. And that's weirdly human. Disturbing, but human. The rest of the episode keeps building on that. Homelander doesn't just want power. He wants independence. He wants respect. He wants people to stop treating him like a product. He genuinely believes he understands America better than the marketing department. He genuinely believes he shouldn't need scripts. And honestly, that's relatable. Not the murder, the other part. The desire to be trusted, the frustration of being managed, the desire to make your own decisions, the need to prove that you are capable. That's real. Then Stillwell strokes his face and calls him a god. And immediately every HR department in America explodes. Because wow, the boundaries here are flexible. But it's fascinating. Because she is intentionally feeding exactly the emotional dependency that is slowly poisoning his mind. And I couldn't help but laugh when the scene ends with, "You're leaking. Thank you." That tiny little exchange is funnier than half the jokes the later seasons try to tell. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. It's understated. It's perfect. And then immediately afterward, Hughie's father tells him he's a good boy, a sensitive boy, a boy who shouldn't get involved in dangerous things. And suddenly, the episode clicks. Because Hughie and Homelander are mirroring each other. They are both trying to prove they are capable. They are both pushing against parental influence. They are both tired of being underestimated. They are both desperate to stop being treated like fragile little boys. They just express it differently. Homelander kills people. Hughie punches metal walls until his knuckles bleed. Same emotional impulse, different scale. That's excellent writing. Excellent. And honestly, that's the kind of layered character work that made early The Boys feel special. The show wasn't just shocking you, it was building emotional parallels underneath the shock. It was letting Hughie and Homelander exist on opposite ends of the same wound. One still has a conscience, one barely has a soul, but both are fighting the humiliation of being controlled. That is a much stronger version of the show than simply, bad Superman is scary. Episode 2 keeps stacking these character dynamics beautifully. Homelander threatens deep. Annie threatens deep. Translucent becomes weirdly sympathetic. The corporate corruption gets deeper. The satire gets sharper. And by the time Hughie and Translucent are having their bizarre, almost friendship near the end of the episode, I realized something. The thing I miss about the early episodes of The Boys isn't the shock. It isn't the violence. It isn't even the satire. It's the simplicity. It's the sincerity. A grieving guy, a hopeful hero, a corporate empire, a handful of normal people trying to kill gods. That's the version of The Boys I loved. And these first 2 episodes capture it beautifully. The pilot is still the stronger episode for me. I'd probably give the pilot a 9.5 or a 10. This one, maybe an 8.5 or a 9, but that is still excellent television. And more importantly, it proves the pilot was not a fluke. The Boys knew exactly what it was doing, at least at the beginning. After rewatching these first 2 episodes, I'm reminded why I fell in love with the show in the first place. Underdogs versus gods. Humans versus corporations. Ordinary people fighting back against a system that feels untouchable. Episode 2 works because it doesn't expand the show outward yet. It tightens the noose. The walls close in. The cage gets smaller. The choices get uglier. And Hughie's soul starts moving one step closer to Butcher's world. That's the show I wanted. That's the show these first 2 episodes promised. And honestly, it's still one hell of a promise.